Kathleen, welcome to Brightway Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Where are you?
I am in Sherrills Ford, North Carolina, which is about 45 minutes northwest of Charlotte for anyone who's flown through Charlotte or visited the area.
Lovely. And can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I grew up in the South, so I have this Southern accent that some of you will hear. Yeah, and I learned to spell phonetically. So I always tell people when I pronounce their names or words, it comes from phonetics, so it may or may not be right. Let's see, what do I want to say about myself? I'm a Jungian psychoanalyst in private practice, and that has been really the direction of my life ever since I was a child, and had a spiritual experience that was real, and I started trying to understand what it meant outside of theological dogma and what it really meant experientially to me as a person and what it meant for my life. And so that ultimately led me on a path of getting a degree in Christian education, then getting a degree in counseling and going into private practice as a marriage and family therapist and licensed professional counselor, an addiction specialist, and then having one of those fateful dreams when I was in my own personal Jungian analysis that got me into analytic training. So that's really been the trajectory of my life, that I feel so grateful that my professional work has also been an avenue of personal development and helping me really learn how to live more fully from who I am authentically and how to move day in and day out from that place.
So you've created this really beautiful hybrid between Christianity and Jungian philosophy. Could you tell us a little bit about the Jungian perspective for people who might not be that familiar with it?
Sure. Yeah. Carl Jung lived in, he was born in about 1875 and died in 1961. And Freud was the founder of the unconscious. He discovered that, in truth, as I was saying to you before we got on camera, we're really not in control of who we are. The unconscious is. And for those of you who don't know what the unconscious means, just think about what you did today and what kicked in that distracted you, or when maybe you had an accident, or you had a dream, or you had a creative burst of energy. The unconscious is that other half of us that really holds, for me, the essence of who we are as the ray of the divine we were born as. And our ego self that we identify, I think of sometimes as that's the laser point that we've become in this world in this lifetime. But the largesse of who we are is the soul, or God within. And so for me, part of what I realized is that this experience I had had in a very conservative, fundamental church, Protestant church, really connected me to a world that transcends any thought. It transcends any one Christian denomination or Christianity or any spiritual teaching, because all the paths lead to the same place. They're just different paths. And so Jung's work embraces that spiritually, but he grounds it in the body mind of our psyche. And so his understanding of our psychology is rooted in that we are not just physical, chemically driven beings, but that we are spiritual and energetically connected to source beings. And his work looks at how those two things inform one another. So it was, for me, the perfect marriage of what I had experienced and my appreciation for the symbolic and the mythological of the sacred stories and my own tradition I grew up in, but also all traditions, and that understanding of what that really means when the rubber hits the road. I mean, how does that really play out? What does that really mean experientially? So
I love how you create a framework, a system around your connection between Christianity and Jungian philosophy, and how that has really informed your entire life journey, your entire creative journey. I think about, of course, your beautiful harping. I think about your books. So you already have published a couple of books, Christian Meditations. You have another one in the works. Could you tell us a little bit about your books?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that Jung says is that when we individuate, which is his primary concept of what the goal of Jungian analysis is, and the Cliff Notes definition of individuation is that we begin to live authentically, that our ego lives in conscious relationship to the larger self, which is unconscious, and that in doing so, we begin to live in alignment between head, heart, gut, and soul. We're moving in one direction harmoniously instead of torn apart in inner conflict, which of course then plays out in outer conflict. So one of the things he says is when we individuate, we have to leave the collective because we have to find our way, the way of our soul. But he says to leave the collective is a high privilege, and we then have a responsibility to help those who are still caught in the collective mindsets to move forward. So I have a passion for writing meditations based on the Judeo-Christian scriptures, looking at the stories as pictures of internal movements of what goes on in our psyche. And again, what that means in terms of our emotions, our body sensations, our feelings, our thinking, our actions. And so it's a way that I think about, had I had that when I was in junior high studying and trying to understand what was happening that was natural because I'm a human being, in light of these stories, the difference it might have made. And I get that feedback from people all the time who read my writing, that it really helps them. It's like it's a relief to know that we are really created in the image of the divine source, whatever name you give the divine source. And it is all good. We just have to find that seed and dance with it to flesh it out in the beautiful way that our soul wants. So my books are about helping people do that in the context of the stories they may have grown up with in their own church traditions, or that you hear in the collective, because the Western world revolves around the Christian calendar, Christmas, Easter, those holidays. And my new book is entitled Emerging from the Darkness, Alchemical Transformation Through the Scriptures. So we have this love that we share of alchemy. And for Jung, alchemy was a metaphor for the individuation process. He says that when you look at these processes that the alchemists talk about and that they were performing in that laboratory, that really what they're telling us is about internal processes that we go through in order to leave the collective we grew up in, to be able to recognize what is my adaptive self, what's my ego, and then what's this larger self in me that wants to manifest. And that we have to go through these processes that are not always fun, desirable, or pleasant, but that in each of those steps, we get to something more of the essence of who we are, and then we can live it. So I'm looking at 12 alchemical processes in this book and pairing them to stories from my life and my lives of people I've worked with, and then stories from the Holy Bible that exemplify that. So
can't wait for that book to come out. And
yeah.
I recommend your other books. They're just so comforting and beautiful. They're so uplifting. For some people, they call this the hero's journey. That's the shorthand for it, that we go through the hero's journey and we are the hero of the story. And, go out in the world to find our truth, active creatively, and then we come back and share that knowledge with the collective.
Yes, and the dragon that we slay really is our own unconscious. But the beauty is like the phoenix that rises. We get that bit of consciousness that we need, and then something new emerges and takes off. And that's the process of what it means to live authentically and to individuate. And I think it's also the process of making music.
Absolutely. It's a one-to-one correlation, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So both of us really appreciate having a system, a high level framework that you can call upon because life is so complicated. And on top of that, we're really complicated. And our times are particularly complicated. And so having a system that we can draw on, and for both of us, we're using alchemy as a primary framework. And one of the beautiful things about alchemy, of course, is it's non-denominational. It's not
Right,
set to one particular belief system or even a particular culture or even a period of time.
right.
It's a very universal system. And as you were sharing earlier with me, when you were even in middle school, I believe, you found yourself speaking and teaching and feeling very, very confident about that, developing that confidence more and more as you did conferences and things like that. And you felt very in your element, should we
Mhm.
say. And then it was a bit of surprise to you when you took up the harp about 9 years ago, and you didn't always feel that way. Could you share a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I used to never feel that way. I mean, this is the gift for me of becoming a part of the Bright Knowledge Harp Guild and really getting in touch with my purpose and beginning to utilize centering. I've centered all my life when I would go to speak, when I would be getting ready to present, or when I'm sitting with an analyst. I do it all the time. But I would sit down at my harp and it never occurred to me to do that. I mean, that even when I say that out loud, that really sounds crazy, doesn't it? And I guess it was crazy in that here was something that was so much a part of my day in and day out life. But when I came to the harp, which I was learning new, my insecurities, my lack of knowing, I mean, I was a beginner. My first harp lesson was 9 years ago in April, and it's, next month. And so I think the not knowing and the not trusting I could learn it well, the just not having the skills, having to start from scratch. And so I think that, for whatever reason, there was this disconnect for me. And one of the things that happened is when I began to define my purpose and connected and refined my purpose down to just to be with the beauty of the moment, which for me, beauty harkens not just to that. It's not that, but it's just lovely, but it's that which is in balance and in sync. I think of on the tree of life, the spear of Teferet, which is the spear of all the sacrificed gods. So it's the spear of the Christ consciousness, but it's also the spear of Osiris and Horus. It's all the sacrificed gods. It is that place where our ego does begin to consciously know and reach for that larger self that is the connection to source, or what I call God within. And it's my shorthand for it. And that, when we connect to that, there is something that flows. And so beauty for me is really about being in that sphere of consciousness. And that is always what I aspire to when I present. It may sound crazy, but when I go to present, even if there are 250 people in the audience, one of my prayers is that Spirit work through me so that I say at least one thing that each person in the room needs to hear. Well, now there's no way I can do that consciously. There's no way. There's no way I could ever set out and prepare a talk or speech. But I trust that in the moment we pick up subtle energies and these things get mixed up in our own alchemical vessel of our body mind unconsciously, and things come out that are bits of wisdom. So beginning to play with, wow, maybe that can happen when I'm at the harp too, you
Most
know?
likely.
Yeah.
And then
And
it will start happening.
yeah, and I mean, and you did that so beautifully in the chakra meditation you did a couple of years ago. I
Mhm.
mean, that's what I'm imagining you
Yeah,
did.
yeah, that's exactly what happened. So that was like an 18-minute long. It turned out 18 minutes. I hadn't planned anything because I was like, it's going to take as long as it takes. and I centered, which is a primary practice of what we do. And again, part of the framework that we both like to use. So I centered and then would open up to the energies as I went up the chakras. And yeah, it's surprising, isn't it? When we know that something works, a system works, and then as time goes on and we achieve a certain level of excellence in that field, when we try something new, number one, we freak out that we're not as excellent at that thing. And then we throw the system out the window at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it is truly, I think, a place where there is an unconscious disconnect. I mean, I think that this is one of the things that I so value your work in the Bright Way, and I've gifted it to a lot of people, by the way. That, that was one of the books everybody close to me got for Christmas this year.
Oh, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Because, one of the things, and I think this was so true for me, and I'm imagining it may be true for other people too, is that even though I have a lot of confidence and have in my speaking, in my professional life, that my harp playing, because I was so new to it just 9 years ago, and I was an adult learner, living with a professional folk musician, always having professional folk musicians in my living room who were jamming. And here I am just starting as a beginner. And you can hear my voice go down. It's like that my own judgment I imposed on that, and all the insecurity that he immediately ushered in. So I think that judgment, that's the other thing I got, is I had to get in touch with my purpose. Then that wasn't as important that I be able to fit there. It became more like, okay, then what's the right place for me? And I think that's something that happens when I brought the centering, when I began to center and come back to myself with my heart, is I could get clear, what do I want with the heart? What does my soul want? What do I want to be able to offer? Yeah.
And it's so interesting that the more you do that, the more specific you are in getting in touch with what you want, the greater experience you have, the deeper experience you have, the more progress you make. And then when you do share your music, people love it even more. You cannot go wrong on really focusing in on what do I love and why do I do this, not how do I please other people. If it's about how to please other people, we could stay at a very fundamental and unsatisfying level on all aspects forever, really.
Mm-hmm.
It really has to be this inside connection.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a little more introverted by nature, so I've never been one who was competitive, and I was I was not athletic as a child at all. I mean, I was the last one chosen for the teams or anything. So, so I'm just confessing up front, I've never been much into competition. But one of the things that I think really has helped me in all areas of my life is that it isn't about comparing myself to someone else, but it's about really comparing myself to me. It's like, where is what I'm doing in relationship to what I want to be doing and what my soul is calling me to. And I think that when I could take the heart for me and the kind of music I want to play, instead of trying to learn all these quick, Irish jigs and reels to play with my terrific husband fiddler, I finally decided I wanted to learn Hasselmann's Petite Berceuse. Wow, a novel idea, a piece actually written for the harp, and a lullaby at that. I mean, and every time I play it, when I first started playing it, John would say, "Wow, that's beautiful. You don't play anything else like that." And I would say, "Yeah, this is the only piece I play that was written for the harp." So I think there was something about that when it becomes about us, not in a way that we don't care about other people. It's not about that, but in a way that it's about how how is this an expression of my soul, and how is spirit embodying in me in this, whether it's my talk, my writing, or my harp playing, then something does shift, and we do get clearer about what is right for us.
I absolutely agree. And I think one of the benefits from having a system is it helps you go through that process. Because it's all well and good to say, well, you should play for yourself and you should understand what you like. It's like, well, okay, how? Now
Right. Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Like, what's that going to be?
Right, right.
As we're talking, I'm thinking about how the system also, and the Bright Way system for me, I've used not only with my heart, but I have used around my writing, because that to me is one of my creative, it's a creative project, and there is a creative juice there for it. However, I have a full-time private practice of seeing analysis. I present regularly, once or twice a month publicly. So I have a full schedule. It's not like I'm sitting around with 3 or 4 hours trying to figure out what to do. And so, the other thing I think about is the principle of compensation, which is, everything, conscious and unconscious, compensate one another. So if I have this really highly focused time of work where I've got my schedule set and I'm doing these things I have to do, then if I don't have a way to hold on to my purpose and intention with my harp or my writing, then the unconscious opposite will kick in, which is to not be focused, to be diffuse, to be scattered. And so, in a way, having the system in place, the system of purpose and intentions and practicum plan, really tracking for fulfillment and letting that be the starting point. These are things I've gotten from the Bright Way. Having those then helps me say, okay, I'm not ready to just go scatter, brainless, and mindless. Yes, I have done these 8 hours of work here, but I have an hour of focus I want to put in over here. And it's driven not by should, must, or ought to get something done, but it's driven by the connection to the desire that that flows through the purpose and the intention. So I think it's also a way of honoring these unconscious dynamics that are just part of how we work. We've got to have diffuse time to balance the very focused time.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want my creative processes to get lost,
Right.
because there's so much focused time on my professional paid work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So by using a system, you really can make the most of that creative time that you have, which is not endless hours in a day, much as you would like it to be.
Right.
You can actually optimize that time and get a lot out of it. So beautiful what you're saying. I think this really is a big message of hope for people who do have full-time jobs, children, looking after the house, all the things that go into a life these days, that there still is a way to have a creative life and to manifest your creative projects in your harping, in your extensive writing. Because I know that you're really getting this book, third book now, I believe. Is it your third one? Yeah. Getting that really rolling, which is such an all-consuming project.
Yes.
Yeah, there actually is a way to do it. And of course, we can use our systems for everything in our lives so that we still are on our purpose when we're seeing clients, when we're teaching, when we're cooking. We can still have that through line of the purpose and practicing fulfillment always.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking today as I was swimming, about when you talk about cross training. And so the last few times that I've swam, it occurred to me, okay, the back runs the show, which you always say in the flow harp technique. And so I thought, okay, my arms are moving from my back, not my shoulders, And so I think those kinds of things that are what I'm going to call just kind of sacred operating principles. When we start to see them in all areas, then the next time I'm sitting at the harp, I'm probably going to think about my back a lot more quickly.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is another big benefit of having a system. I just love that we both love systems. Oh, is it helps you see the connection between things that seem different. Swimming and harp, oh, those seem very different. Actually, not really, you know.
Right.
You have been cross-training this whole time. So then, you can go swimming guilt-free because it is playing into your harp. And just talking a little bit about the cross-training, I always say that our harps teach us what we need to know, whether we knew it or not. It
Mhm.
teaches us always something surprising.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that the harp gave you the opportunity to go even deeper into your practice and to commit even more to what you knew.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I'm thinking I was gifted a harp at the first of the year. I actually, January 2nd, I was gifted a harp that's a 15-year-old Heartland Dragon Heart harp. For those of you who know the Heartland, now Heartland Dave only makes carbon fiber, but this is wind harp. And the shape of the harp is such that you don't lean it back. You just sit, you snuggle up to it. And it's been very interesting going back and forth between that harp and my Merlin, our harp. I have a Rick Rebar Merlin that I've had for 9 years now. Well, I guess it came probably in June, but and so it's been interesting playing with the different body positions, where with the Merlin leaning back against my shoulder, and then with the dragon heart, I'm kind of nestled up, sitting right behind it, and experiencing my center. Since we were talking about in the practices of centering, and where you say identify your literal physical center, and the idea, sometimes I play when I'm trying to sound more musical instead of so just flat because I'm so worried about the notes. I really, I try to actually sway a little bit on my heart bench to feel to feel the rhythm. And I've found that it's so much easier to do that sitting behind the dragon heart without it on my shoulder. It's kind of interesting.
Very
Um,
interesting.
so here I am in a way doing cross training between these two different harps, because when I approach them a little bit different physically. And so each one's helping me feel and experience nuances of the other one in a different way.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
you're reminding me of the practice of centering is an active practice, and it happens in real life in different circumstances. We cannot recreate exactly the same circumstance in our life 24/7, and we
Right.
wouldn't want to really. And it reminds me of meditation, and when they say, well, the goal would be that you could get into a meditative state on the street
Yes.
in Mumbai,
Yes.
and you could actually get there, yeah.
Yes, I always say to people when I'm teaching, and some of I consider my writing kind of a psycho-spiritual perspective. It's a marriage of the two. I always say to people, whatever spiritual practice you're doing, the whole purpose of the practice is not what you experience in the moment you're doing it, but it's so that you develop the psychic muscle. So when you really need to do it, it automatically kicks in. So the street of whatever, it kicks in because you've done it in the practice so much that you have this muscle that's there to help you connect and access what you need in the moment within yourself and the source that's always, I believe, flowing in us.
I love it. I love what you're saying. Oh, so if there were one misperception that you would like to share with people that you find pretty common around creativity, what would that misperception be?
That you have to have a big block of time to be creative. And I still have to work with myself on this misperception because part of what I've realized is that if I wait until I just have really big blocks of time to play my harp or do my writing, it'll never get done. So one of the things that's helped me with my harp from day one is I keep it, I have a great room, and so it's always out in my great room. And if I'm cooking and I have 10 minutes, something's on the stove, then in that 10 minutes, I can go sit down at my harp and I can practice for 10 minutes. I'm learning more. I have a harder time with writing in 10-minute increments, but I have begun to learn that if an idea comes into my head, I can take my phone out and dictate. And that's been invaluable. So I think the one misperception I'm still working to combat, and maybe some of you all are too, is that it takes a big block of time, whatever big means, in order to be creative. When in truth, we can be creative if we've got a moment.
I love it. I love it. And if there were only one thing that you could tell people about creativity, what would you like them to know today?
Oh, that creativity is an instinct and archetype that flows in all of us. It's there. We don't have to find we don't have to find it or cultivate it. We do have to connect to it. We have to forge a conscious connection to it, but we don't have to discover it in the sense of going outside of ourselves and looking. You know, that creativity is in all of us. And in fact, Jung said that creativity is one of the primary instincts or archetypes that are at work in the human psyche. So.
This makes me want to cry. I mean, I really wish people knew this.
Yeah.
It would change the entire world if people knew this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jung has this little essay, and I'm always having the training candidates read it when I'm teaching the candidates that I'm in a program where we train Jungian analysts. And it's called, Jung says there are 5 psychological factors or instinctive factors at work: hunger, sexuality, movement or the drive to activity, self-reflection, and creativity. So he puts it on a par with hunger and sexuality and movement, which we know is natural if we watch babies.
Yep.
And self-reflection and creativity. So that's what I would want people to know.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kathleen. It's been a delight talking with you, as always.
Yes.
And where can people find you?
Oh, my website is Kathleen Wiley, JungianAnalyst.com. And my writings are at innerdivinespirit.com. So if you go to innerdivinespirit.com, and I do have a Facebook page, and my introverted self has not done a lot on social media, so I'm going to be working on that lately. But innerdivinespirit.com, and that I do have, you can sign up there if you're interested in my writings, and I periodically send things out. So yeah, I would love that.
Wonderful. Oh, well, thank you again for spending the afternoon with me.
Oh, it was great. Thank you. I'm inspired now.
Yay! The circle flows.
It does, yes.
Bye for now.
Okay, bye-bye.